live on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
A very warm welcome. This is Spectrum on Radio 1. I'm your host, Edmond Kizito. On Spectrum tonight, we're going to review the week some of the issues that have been happening this week. President Museveni spoke about the ongoing corruption probe by the Ad Hoc Committee of Parliament. 1, 2. We'll talk about the jet money, which is supposed to cause ripples between the Central Bank and the Ministry of Finance. Normally they work together. This time they disagreed. We'll look at that. We'll look at the contempt of Parliament. The Committee on Rules, Discipline and Privileges is continuing with its work to establish if two ministers, one minister and two ministers under the Prime Minister are in contempt of Parliament. Imam was in Parliament today. We'll talk about that. Al-Shabaab in Somalia. We'll talk about why there's a sudden burst of interest. 3 heads of state met in Kenya yesterday. Previously, only 2 countries had troops there. Now we have 3, and Kenya is also coming in as well. Other countries say they also want to contribute troops. Women and power cuts. Outrage about outages. We'll talk about that as well. And donors cutting aid over corruption. Our guests tonight, a panel, Dr. Bainomugisha, Director, Research and Manager of the Peace and Democracy Program at ACODE. You're most welcome, Dr. Bainomugisha.
Thank you very much.
We're also joined by Dr. David Mushabe from the Mushabe-Munungu and Company Advocacy. We're most welcome, Dr. Mushabe.
Thank you, Edmond, and good evening, viewers and listeners.
Viewers, because we are also on the internet. Our third guest is Imam Kasozi, not a doctor, but is a lecturer at IUIU and a Muslim cleric. You're most welcome, Imam Kasozi.
Thank you very much. Good evening, listeners and viewers.
Imam, this week President Museveni spoke out on the ongoing corruption probe by the Ad Hoc Committee of Parliament. He emphasized that ministers would not step aside given the fact that he had investigated these allegations against them and found them to be baseless. He also questioned a number of resolutions which he called unfair. Now, many people are beginning to wonder if the executive makes such strong statements, whether this committee should continue. We've heard that the committee is considering approaching the Speaker with a view to calling off the probe altogether, saying the executive is interfering. What are we seeing here, Imam?
Thank you very much. I think it is a very interesting scenario whereby the President, in his State of Nation address, comes out clear and says he's going to handle corruption with strong effort. And now, what appears to be a corrupt situation, he coils down. This again throws us into another situation whereby he has been thought to be being held hostage by some of his ministers, those who wield a lot of wealth and therefore power. And now that probably some of the people involved are the people who have been at the helm of the intelligence of this country. They know what security is. He could be afraid probably of them. But I want to say, to thank the President of saying he investigated them. Where is the report of this investigation? Why doesn't he make it public and then prove to the Ugandans that, you know, what they are doing is fake, this is what we did, and my team involved so and so, and this is our findings. As long as there are no findings, I think President Museveni is undermining himself. He is undermining himself in the sense that he wants to control the whole nation in the style of the big man leadership, which is a traditional form of leadership that no longer exists in democracies as we are being called. And you know, where he has the mandate of all Ugandans, the MPs also have mandate of all Ugandans as a collective unit, because they could have more votes than him, because each of them has some number. Added together, therefore, they have a bigger voice than him. And therefore, because a parliament is another arm of government, it cannot, as it makes the laws, okay, for us to move forward, it cannot let also the other arms of government work independent. Okay, as they are independent, but they must be cooperating somehow. Therefore, my challenge to President Museveni is: you investigated, you have a report, make it public, okay, and then let the public look at it, and we critique it. Then we shall know whether he did an investigation, because there is a sickness in this country whereby people say I have investigated, and by investigation, what does he mean? He made 2 telephone calls to people, and he calls it an investigation. And others say, I have made a research. Okay? When you ask him, you made a research, how? What did you? What were your parameters? What variables did you consider? What analysis did you make in order to qualify your work to be a research work? You see, because it is not every finding that people make is a research. No, it may be just a findings, maybe information. And therefore, this is where we go further to ask, what tools did you employ? So, Mr. President, sir, thank you very much for investigating this. Thank you for saying it was just rumors. We want these rumors put clear, and then we pin the MPs who, if we don't, then let the MPs do their work, then we shall compare the notes.
Dr. Mushabe.
Yes, to a large extent I agree with Imam Kasozi. If indeed His Excellency has conducted investigations, he should make this report public, so that it also helps this committee wrap up their work quickly. But if that report is to be tucked somewhere in a secret place, and then they hear from one person saying, no, they are clean, then it leaves a lot, in suspicion. However, the genesis of the problem is that somehow the relationship between the parliament and the executive or the president has sort of been interwoven and symbiotic. The president appoints the ministers. Normally, the parliament should come in to question those who have questionable history. But the practice has been that every appointee of the president goes before the parliament. In that sense, he has ceded a lot of power to the parliament. Now it is too late now to roll it back. That's why when he appoints, then there is a committee of parliament which must approve. And you are aware there are about 5 ministers who are not approved by the committee of parliament, and they are there.
They can't get the job.
So here, if the parliament found that there is something questionable with respect to the moral turpitude of some of the individuals, then the executive should respect that. That goes to the principle of separation of powers.
Dr. Bainomugisha.
Thank you very much. I entirely actually agree with my colleagues, and let me just add my voice like this. One is that the corruption levels in this country have become unprecedented. It is too much. Secondly is that oil sectors all over, especially in most third world countries that have oil resources, it is very corruptive industry, oil and gas industry. And that's why, of course, we in the civil society are very much concerned to make sure that we have an oil governance regime that is very transparent and accountable to the citizens. Therefore, now when it comes to the allegations, of course, there are still allegations of the corrupt ministers. If the president, because there are 3 arms of government: the executive, who is the president and his cabinet, the legislature, and the judiciary. If the executive has done its investigation, in any case he has the, he has the security, he has everything, they have done that, and he has done his part. Actually, his report could be even used as a raw material to the committee of parliament that is investigating. So he should actually make it, submit it to the committee to even help their work. Secondly, Dr. Mushabe commented about the whole question of separation of powers. He needs to allow Parliament to do its work, to implement or to enjoy the principal doctrine of separation of powers. When he interferes in the investigations now, then of course the whole accusation that actually the executive has been undermining the independence of of Parliament. So I think he needs to steer clear out of this and allow the committee to do its work. In any case, then they will also find these ministers innocent, and as actually was it Dr. Mushabe or Imam was saying, actually if these ministers are found to be innocent, their political rating will soar.
Yes. Imam Kadika, so let's talk about the money in the bank. The central bank governor had a tough time in parliament being asked about the jets. Then he says he gave the president money to buy the jets on condition that it will be paid back. Now the ministry, he says the money has been paid back in part at least. The Minister of Finance says it's not true. What do you read in all this?
You know, there is a big confusion in how we operate in this country. And what actually steps it up is because of some people holding positions when they are not sure they are the occupants of these positions. They are given the responsibility, they are the ones in charge, but all the time they keep making reference to the top office for decision making. The English have a saying, you better take a wrong decision than taking none at all.
Yes.
And these people are hiding because we have people in positions who are waiting, what does the big man think, so that I say it, and therefore I am with him. And this is where the president, Mr. Museveni, the one I knew, I listened to as far back as 1980, is a quite different person, because I had the opportunity to meet Mr. Museveni when I was a young man after I had finished my O-level, and he was really talking and preparing to go to the bush and meeting people. I had the opportunity to sit in his meeting, and I also had the opportunity to listen to his campaign of 1980. I had the ability to understand at that time, because I think I was about 20 years old. So now, when I look at him, and when sometimes I read his writings and see his actions today, I find a bigger problem. And he created it purposely for people to look at him as... So when Mr. Museveni said he was Saragabe, he was not joking.
Yes.
He was not joking. He looked at how the Mugabe worked, how the Kabakaship worked, how the whatever worked, and then he said, I am the overall of them.
He was the king of kings.
He wanted to take the responsibility that a traditional chief takes, whereby he owns everything, the rest are all subjects. And therefore, this is what has happened. What we are seeing now, two important institutions of government, vis-a-vis finances and money is concerned, contradicting themselves at this time when the state of the economy is in shambles. We are threatened. That's why I begin to pay to people who are investing in this country, who are trying to work from this country. They find it very, very hard. Because this morning I was listening to the sister radio to this radio. I don't know whether it's a sister or brother. I don't know which one to use. And people were making arguments about the rents and the goodwill from the building owners, and they were wondering. Then I told them, what they don't know, it all says it all, that the purported owners of these buildings in this country don't own them. That's why they take this goodwill in that big way. I got a problem with my grandparent who owns one of these buildings. He purported to own them, Mutasa Kafero.
Yes. Because
he's an uncle to my mother, therefore he by tradition in Uganda he's my grandparent.
Yes.
And I went to him, I wanted space in Aziza. This next one, the Aziza building.
Yes.
And he told me, yes, I give it to you, but I want goodwill of 7 million. I told him, if I gave you goodwill of 7 million, if I start, it means I will not be able to work. I said, thank you very much, Jaja, goodbye. And I went away. Okay, and I went away. So this thing has gone, and it has burdened so many people. So what do we see in this? The Minister of Finance, which is supposed to be the checkpoint probably of the Bank of Uganda. The Bank of Uganda is supposed to be fine-tuning the economy, regulating the monies, and it is saying it is not sure, and there is a contradiction between the Secretary to the Treasury and the Governor Bank of Uganda.
Right.
I get worried as a person.
And the Secretary to the Treasury is the signatory to government's money. Yeah. Dr. Bainomugisha, what do you read in this?
I think we have a crisis, and this is a governance crisis, and I think he did touch about it. This has to do, of course, with the confidence of people who are in positions of responsibilities, because I think sometime back the deputy governor Bank of Uganda made a statement that the money was safe. Today we know that, the real governor, the substantive governor says the money was used. And then now the Treasury is saying the money is intact. Who should we believe? Do we have a crisis in governance in this country? And I think all this points to a serious crisis. And if things are like this, then actually the economic crisis that this country is facing is likely to deepen, and we may not see any solution in the nearest future. But I think it is also important to underscore the point Imam Kasozi talked about, that when you give people responsibility,
before we authority, let's talk about the crisis that you are defining. How would you find its roots?
And actually, this point, the money for that has been used to buy the jets is linked to number one, the whole oil thing. Yes. Because look, the president, the executive wants us to give him all the confidence that the money from oil will be safe. And I remember, he promised that money from oil will be invested in it could get lasting wealth. It will not be used to buy wines and perfumes, and jewelry like other countries like West Africa, Gabon has done. But of course, when you use them to purchase, of course, jet fighters, really the line between jewelry
when we don't have when there's no go, we just
yes. So I think there is a crisis, and then of course that is why it is very imperative to strengthen the three arms of government: the judiciary, the executive, and the parliament. But our focus should be on the parliament, because these are elected members. Who represent the 34 million Ugandans. That I think they need to be strengthened to check the executive, because you see, you cannot allow major decisions of the country to be made by the executive alone. So that's why actually when I see if you read today's Monitor, where the president has said he will disregard the resolutions of parliament, which actually are very good. Take the case where they are saying that actually transactions should stop until the parliament has put in place the legal regime. That is fundamental.
Yes.
So what's wrong with that? And second, that of course
having laws before we go into discussion
to discuss or negotiating production sharing agreements with companies without a legal regime. What's wrong? We can wait, and so that we have a very clear, transparent governance system, legal policy, and administrative framework.
Because we have
yes, all is there. It is intact.
And therefore, whatever we prepare to do, it should be in line with it. If we were doubting oil,
that would be different.
We would be saying, let us get money from it, then would be conmen. But we are people saying that we have our own.
Let me conclude my point. Yes. I think the president, of course, we do not doubt that the president is well intentioned in this. But you see, he has enhanced that public confidence by allowing that public scrutiny, because now, because of what is happening, the public has kind of lost confidence that the government could be a very good custodian of these resources. And it's in the public trust doctrine, which I'm sure imagine knows very well, is that these natural resources belong to us, and the government is just a custodian of these resources. Increasingly, this public trust doctrine is being eroded. People think that actually this oil could be monopolized or exploited by a few political elites at the expense of the majority. So I think there is a need for government to rebuild this public confidence by allowing that scrutiny, by allowing Parliament to do its work, so that actually that confidence can be reviewed. But as of now, of course, when the president says he will not respect the resolutions, then it means now that the whole doctrine of separation of powers has collapsed, and then we don't have actually democracy.
That's a very strong statement. Before we hear from you, Dr. Mushabe, the governor issued a statement. It was publicized today. It's dated the 14th of November, in which he says, finally signs it off, says all expenditures should be appropriated by Parliament. In other words, the situation where the president draws money from the central bank should not happen again. It looks like he's regretting it. He says the power should be given to Parliament explicitly. What do you say to that?
I think that's what it should be, because you see the whole doctrine of separation.
But one day we might wake up and we need some widgets, and the president can't.
No, you see, actually, I have also thought about that one. The national security is very important, and of course, when you elect a president, you have to trust him, and you actually entrust him with the important thing, national security. That's why actually the Constitution provides him that freedom to actually deploy the security forces of this country and inform the parliament in 24 hours.
Right.
So that can be done, but you see, he should not do it alone. Actually, like the committee there is a committee on security and internal affairs, defense and internal affairs. It should be able to work with the executive to authorize some of these very security sensitive expenditures.
Strong point there, Dr. Mushabe.
You see, Edmond, some people have taken themselves to be more patriotic, more nationalistic than others. That's why you see, like, members of opposition in parliament, they are more or less treated like lepers. Yet these are people who are telling the truth. They represent the people, the people's views on the streets. So who would actually object to an idea where the president says, look, we have a crisis here, a security crisis, we need this? The parliament would pass that on without any resistance. But what we have, and I want to concur with Dr. Bainomugisha, that we have a political, philosophical crisis. We don't know whether we are in a democracy or otherwise. So we want to be democratic when it is convenient and do other things when it is expedient.
Explain that statement to us.
No, you know, for me, I think the words I use are clear enough. We are in a crisis. Actually, this is the whole of Africa. We want to emulate the Western democracies, but at the same time, we are rooted in the African aristocratic, autocratic systems. We have a hangover from our old African history, but at the same time we want to wear the suits of the Western democracies.
Explain that aristocratic allegation that you're making.
Every person that is given either RDC, chairman, OC3, LP, or president,
they sit on thrones.
No, they are chiefs. You don't question them. They look at themselves, they feel like they're in the shoes of the old kings or the old chiefs.
They become rulers.
They are unquestionable. They become rulers, not leaders.
Yeah.
So we have a political philosophical crisis. We should decide, do we want a democracy or not? And if we want a democracy, then we want transparency.
That's correct.
I applaud this current parliament, the 9th parliament. I think it comprises men and women who have studied the crisis caused by oil in other countries, and they said, look, let's take action right now before the thing is out of hand. And as facts have revealed themselves, money has already exchanged hands. As you had the debate in parliament, the evidence is not there yet, but it looks like money has already exchanged hands. So if they sit back and they don't intervene now, what will your children find, as you know, in respect of oil? Would they share anything?
I think
the oil companies are selling from one to another, from one to another.
We have to go for a break. This is Spectrum on Radio 1 reviewing the week tonight.
Comment on that point there.
When we come back, we've been talking about oil. When we come back, contempt of parliament. Amama Mbabazi, the Prime Minister, appears before the committee. We'll talk about the power cuts, outrage over outages, also donors cutting aid over corruption. Do stay with us.
Is your internet provider turning your world upside down? Broadband Company offers fast and reliable internet solutions. And for the first 100 subscribers this month, we offer zero connection fees. Save up to 400,000. For more information on these offers, call toll-free 0800 222 111. Broadband Company, more than you expect.
To run the MTN Kampala Marathon this November 27th. And the best reason of all, proceeds go to improving access to clean water in Amuria district. It's your time to run. MTN. Everywhere you go.
John, Mike and I will go back a bit. We knew John at the beginning, working for someone else. But he was different. He had vision, saw opportunities. He started working towards his goal, opened his own garage, and worked, learning the hard way. His reputation spread. Trust, consistency, quality. So many people were coming to him from all parts. He made himself and his whole street prosper, and also helped friends, seeing potential in people and helping them on. But John never shouts about all his success. He's just who he is. Special.
So here's to one like John, who made a difference, who enjoyed Nile Special, the rich, satisfying taste from the sauce. Nile Special.
You've earned it. Not for sale to persons under 18.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90 is brought to you by Stanley Bank.
Welcome back on Spectrum. Tonight we are reviewing the week. We've been talking about oil, we've been talking about the executive, talking about why the ministers should not resign, even though the Parliament made a recommendation that they should resign. Our guests tonight, our panel, Dr. Bainomugisha, Director of Research and Manager of the Peace and Democracy Program at ACODE,